Hello, everybody. Sorry, we were just running a few minutes behind, but we are ready to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do a quick introduction real fast before I hand it over to our panel and discussion for today. So I am Whitney Reisner, and I am the board president for Superheroines, etc. And I just wanted to say thank you all so much for joining us for our first ever Superheroines Con. Just before we go on, my pronouns are she and her. For those of you who might not be familiar with who we are, Superheroines, etc. is a 501c3 nonprofit that fights for representation and inclusion in geek culture. We serve a growing community of women via monthly member-driven events that range from a graphic novel book club to our women's GMing cohort. If you would like to learn more, you can visit us online at superheroinesetc.org, or you can see us after the panel. We also encourage you to engage with us on social media by using the hashtag SheCon2020. As we begin, I invite you to join in acknowledging the land that we occupy that sustains us. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, their dreams, and energy to making the history that has led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will. Some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hopes of a better future and a better life. And some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to uncover what has been buried by acknowledging that we are not the first stewards of this land that we call home, honoring previous tenders of the land and expressing gratitude for our access to the land. Because of the virtual environment of this con, we are coming from all over the United States, and we are representing the traditional lands of many people. I encourage you to go to native-land.ca to learn more about where you live and share in the comments. We pay respects to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Acknowledgement is the beginning, and after this event, we encourage you to learn more. During this event, you can ask questions in the chat, either through YouTube or on our Discord channel. We will have a moderator tracking both of them. If you need closed captions, YouTube has a built-in feature. You just have to hover over the screen that has a CC, and you will be able to turn on closed captionings. With that, I would like to go ahead and hand this over to Lindsay.
Great. Thank you so much, Whitney, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to everyone, to our panelists for being here, and thank you to those of you who are watching. I'm really excited here to present this Romance Revisited panel. We're bringing back some authors who've spoken to our group before about romance writing in the romance industry and romance books, and we've got someone new joining us as well. We're going to have a really great discussion tonight that I'm really looking forward to. So I'm going to start by asking each of the panelists, if you would, to give a quick intro of who you are and what you write. Angie, would you start us off?
Sure. My name is Angie Fox. I write romantic mystery, and usually my books end up in the southern United States. I keep trying to branch out, and then I end up back there because the whole history of that area fascinates me. I write the Southern Ghost Hunter mysteries. I was just editing the latest one all day today. I write the Accidental Demon Slayer books about a gang of biker witches and a demon slayer who comes into her powers and can talk to her dog. And I've always wanted to talk to, well, I do talk to my dogs, and I think they answer back. So, you know, but this dog actually really does answer back. So there you go. And then I also write the Monster MASH books about a paranormal MASH unit during a war.
Awesome, thank you. And Shawntelle, could you tell us about yourself?
First of all, I want to say thanks for allowing me to join you. Can't wait to have some fun. So pretty much probably the series that I'm most known for is the Coveted series. I guess I consider that my Werewolf with OCD series, featuring Natalia Stravinsky. And that is a urban fantasy romance series. Then I also have Heroes Run in Packs series. And the latest one, the third book in the series, McGinnis Werewolves, I'm working on that one right now. And that is a paranormal romance featuring werewolves. And so I have several other books, but mostly I focus on werewolves.
Awesome, thank you. And Rachel?
Hi, my name's Rachel, and I'm in Nova Scotia. And I write the Game Changers male hockey romance series for Carina Press. Book 4 is about to come out in September, and I'm working on books 5 and 6 right now. And then I'm kind of looking forward to branching out into some non-hockey stuff, maybe something like paranormal or sci-fi. So yeah, this is my first author thing, so I'm really excited, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. We're happy to have all of you. Thank you all so much for being here. Great. So I'm wondering if you guys could go and tell us what it led you to write romance, and specifically the genres or types of romance that you write. You can jump in, or I can assign. I can assign a response.
Usually when we have an in-person panel, we like have an order. We go right down the road,
Yeah.
and that way it doesn't, you don't get a choice. now that we have a choice, we're like,
I guess I can go ahead and go. As far as me, I started out reading romance as soon as I could dig into my mom's collection. And we're talking about the OGs, Danielle Steele and Christine Feehan. And I have very vivid memories. I actually on Twitter, I was asked the question, can I remember one of my first romance books? And it was Danielle Steele's Zoya. And I remember reading it and thinking, yes, I remember thinking like mind blown. And then I got into the Zebra classics, you know, with the little shiny seal on it. And I devoured those. And I just loved the idea of a happily ever after, you know, for the couple. And so that's kind of what really got me into writing romance, was just enjoying them, you know, from my teenage years, you know, into college and stuff. I loved romance.
Yeah, I also grew up with romance, and I was not allowed to read romance. I came from a very conservative household, and I was allowed to read mysteries, but no romance. So I used to have to hide my romances. I couldn't check them out of the library, but we had a used bookstore that was close to us. And so I could buy all I wanted for like $1 or 50 cents, but then I had to hide them. And so I would tape them underneath my bed frame. But it became hard because then I had these keeper books, and it's like, okay, well, that's going to take up some real estate, you know, on the bed frame. And my greatest compliment was if you were taped under there, you know. And actually, Shawntelle, I think you were with me. I ran into Heather Graham at a conference, and I was like, her series, the One Wore Gray, One Wore Blue, One Rode West, was all three. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be really cool. And Shawntelle was like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, I really am. And I went up to her and I said, I had your books taped under my bed frame. And that was like, you know, you need a context. And I didn't give it, but I did later. You know, she's very kind. But yeah, I think it's when you're a fan and you love to write, you love to read, you start thinking, well, gee, I'd love to do that too. I'd love to see if I can write something that people will get excited about and love as much as I love, you know, some of these books that I have, you know, on my keeper shelf. And that's really where it starts. And the fact that also, I think we need happy ever afters these days. And even that was true for me as a kid. I mean, life is tough. And when I go into a book and I love the characters, I just want to know in my mind that everything's going to be okay in the end. And romance guarantees that. It guarantees us that people are, you know, that there are bad things in the world, but there are good people, and that they deserve happiness.
Yeah, I think for me, like, I've always been a huge reader, but I think at some point I just realized the thing I like the most, whether it's in a book or a TV series or whatever, is the romance plot. So I think I kind of came to reading actual romance novels sort of late, when I realized, well, why not just read a book that's entirely a romance plot? Like, why not skip the rest? Because a lot of times the romance plot would be sort of unsatisfying because the author wouldn't really care about it as much as I do. Which is why I also, like, you know, discovered fanfic when I was in my early 20s, and, like, you know, just because I was also a big comic book fan, which is famously frustrating for romance plot lines. So fanfic really filled in some of those gaps. And so I guess that's where I came to it. Just a love of, like, I could just read people falling in love over and over again forever. And then I wanted to write my own.
All right. Thank you, guys. So you guys were good enough to tell us a little bit about what you write. For people who are watching who are new to your work, what book or series would you recommend they start with?
Good question.
I only have one, so read the one. Read Game Changers.
What's the title? I
Can you
didn't
tell us a little bit about it?
Game Changers.
Game Changers.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. It's a male hockey romance series that kind of started with one superstar player in the first book on one team, and it's about him kind of coming out, and then the effects that has throughout the league for other players who are also either closeted or figuring out their own sexuality. So it's sort of a nice, like, it's like a nice series. It's like about one guy making everything easier for other players. So that's why it's called Game Changers, because each one of them sort of has their own impact on the league and the game.
Awesome. That sounds great.
For me, I guess it would be my Southern Ghost Hunter series, just because it is my latest one, and I think I've learned. You learn as a writer as you go through your career, and this is the series that I think I've always wanted to write. I just didn't know it. And you know, it's got romance, it's got a lot of small town intrigue, it's got you know, supernatural, and it's very serious at times, but also a lot of fun. And so actually the first book is free right now, and it's called Southern Spirits. Actually, it's behind me. Haha, cool. I didn't know how to decorate my office, so I have book covers framed, although I'm behind on them. But since that's the first book in the series, I have it. Yeah, that's what I would recommend.
Awesome. Thank you. Shawntelle.
Usually for me, most folks find me through the Coveted series, although other folks usually start out with the Heroes Run and Pack series. But I've kind of started an offshoot of the Coveted series called Flea Market Magic. That's the new series with the new title Thrift Store Trolls. It just came out in June. And then the next book in the series, Deceptive Dime Store Demons, will be coming out in February. So most folks usually, if they're going to start me, they start with the Coveted series and then they jump to Flea Market Magic.
Awesome. That sounds really cool. And that leads us really well into what my next question was going to be, which is, what are you working on right now?
I'm working on book 5 of my Game Changers series, which is another hockey player who's going to fall in love with a guy.
That's what we love.
Exactly.
Yeah. And when does book 2 come out?
Or it's book 4 is coming out in September, September 21st.
Okay. Awesome.
That one's called Common Goal.
Excellent.
Ooh, I like that title. For me right now, I am working on McGinnis Werewolves, and that's the 3rd book in the Heroes Run and Pack series. So that'll be another paranormal romance that'll be due out late September, early October.
Awesome. Andy?
I'm working on book 10 of the Southern Ghost Hunter series. Book 9 actually comes out at the end of this month. It's called Southern Bred and Dead. And then I also just received rights back from St. Martin's to a trilogy that I wrote for them. And this was back in 2011, and they had me make some changes that weren't really changes that I wanted to make as an author. And so I'm going to do a director's cut of that series and re-release it. And I might even retitle it, because I think what I'm going to do is going to be very different from the original. So I'll be releasing that new series early next year, probably January, February.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So could you guys talk about what other romances have you read this year or just lately that you're really excited about? I know that our audience really wanted some good recommendations. So besides your own books, which everybody should of course be checking out, what else have you read lately that you were pretty excited about?
I would say, how much time have you got?
Like, what do I? Yeah.
How do I start? I guess I can give one recommendation that I tell everybody about is like Helen Hoag's books, The Kiss Quotient. I cannot wait for the next one to come out, but I absolutely love her portrayal of her heroine or her hero who are on the spectrum. And as someone who is a parent of a child who's on the spectrum, I love the genuine portrayal. I love the romantic arc. So yes, Helen, if you hear this, I adore your books.
I've been blowing through all 21 books. Actually, I'm only on book 11 or 12 right now of the Pennyfoot Hotel series. I'd never heard of this. And I put out a Christmas book this past Christmas, and I had been checking a little too much on Amazon. And so Amazon started recommending all these Christmas books to me, and it recommended a Christmas book from the series. And it's set in the like 1906, I think is when it starts. And it takes place at this hotel outside of London where all the elite go, and they've got like secret card rooms downstairs and you know, all kinds of shenanigans upstairs. And it's about the staff at the hotel. So it's almost like Downton Abbey. It's an upstairs, downstairs. And the heroine is the owner. She's a widow, and there's a slow burn romance with her manager. So you get that, you get romances upstairs and downstairs, and it's full of intrigue and these great characters. And I love the setting, you know, and like book 11, they're up to like 1910 right now. It's you know, and I keep saying I'm not going to binge it. I'm gonna control myself. I'm gonna read like a book in between, and then I sneak and I start reading the next one. And I just went ahead and bought the whole series, so I've got it all. So that would be my big one, and it's by Kate Kingsbury, who I'd never read before. That would be mine.
I read I love Erin McClellan's So Over the Holidays series, and the latest one called Bottle Rocket came out around the 4th of July, because each of the books is set during a holiday. The first one was Christmas and the second was Valentine's Day. It's about 3 siblings, and all of the characters are queer, but there's male-female romance, there's male-male romance. So it's like really diverse and cool. Okay. And really, really hot, like just great, like really, really body romances, but like also really just inclusive and sensitive and really sex positive. So I really liked those ones. I loved Alexis Hall's Boyfriend Material, which just came out recently. It's like an homage to the 90s British rom-com. So there's like a lot of references and it's very funny. I love Alexis Hall's books. And also Kat Sebastian's latest, Two Rogues Make a Right, is an adorable historical male-male romance. It's the latest in her series, Seducing the Sedgwicks, which like every book of that is fantastic. So that's another favorite. I've read a lot. I hate to just pick a few, but I'm just going to pick a few. But those 3.
That's all sound great. And we're glad to have a lot of recommendations, I'm sure. So this panel is a sort of celebration of Throwback Thursday. It's a panel that Superheroines hosted several years ago with some of the same authors back. So I wonder if you guys could talk a little bit about what has changed in the industry or in the romance world since you last did this panel with us, or in the last few years in the case of new to the panel members.
Wow.
It's a big question.
That's a good question.
It is a good question.
I would say that with the way the industry has expanded in terms of indie publishing and such, that I'm seeing a lot more of a variety in the genres. And I'm seeing, for example, Supernatural Academies, where you had a lot of books, Supernatural Academy books come out. And so the beautiful thing with romance as well is you're also getting now independent authors can write what they want. You're getting more diverse romances. You're just giving the readers a lot more versus what the traditional houses usually publish.
Well, and I see we're getting more in the smaller genres too. I'm huge into alien romance and space operas. And it used to be really, really hard to find those books. Basically, I had to go and hope that Dorchester had something new out that I hadn't read. Because they were the main publisher doing it. And then, we did get into the boom and paranormals where there's more out there, but it still wasn't, a lot of it started sounding the same because then publishers were like, oh, this particular trope sells, so we're going to keep publishing it. And as a reader, I'd read so much of it already. And so I found that I really enjoy, with indie books, I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, sometimes when you've read so many books, you're like, oh, I know where this is headed. And the best thing is when you read some of these newer books and it heads off in a different direction because the author knows you thought that that's where it was headed. They've read all those books too. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. And I'm going to go over here. And it's exciting. Yes. It's fun.
Yeah, I think definitely, greater diversity is the biggest thing that we're seeing. And even in queer romance, it's largely been a lot of male, a lot of white male, and we're starting to see a change there, and it's really exciting. I think a lot of the books that have been getting a lot of attention have been not that, even within this genre. So I think that's really cool to see, and I'm excited to read more of them.
Yeah, there are more male. I read male too. There are more male historicals than there used to be even a couple of years ago. I would blow through a couple of my favorite authors, and then that was it. Nobody else was writing it.
Yeah, and more non-white, just more diverse stories. And I hope we see a lot more of them. I'd like to see more that aren't set in England and America. Some different settings would be awesome.
For a while, it was only Regency, which is fine. Yeah. I love Regency, but it was like, oh, is that the only time? And I get the whole trope of, it's forbidden and they could kill you, so therefore that adds tension. That makes for an exciting book, but there's so much more you could do with it.
Yeah.
I remember reading one called a Forbidden Rumspringa, and it was an Amish male.
Yeah, that's a really fun one. I love that series.
Yeah.
And so to follow up with some of what we're discussing, Rachel, can I ask you to talk a little bit about LGBTQ romance, and when you talk about male, what you mean versus queer romance and other things for viewers who may not have as much context for the genre as we do?
Yeah, I think it used to be called, people usually would say gay romance, but that's just not at all inclusive. It's really narrow. Cause a lot, for me, I know my characters are bisexual, so they're not necessarily gay. So it's some of them are bisexual, some are, they can be pansexual, or, there's a lot of different ways they can identify. So there was that. And then also, female romance is starting to, it's always been around, but it's finally starting to get some big releases with some of the bigger publishers and stuff. So I think it all falls under, and then we're seeing, just asexual, aromantic, demisexual, just, different representation, and it's great to see. So it's really you can't just call it gay romance, which, I mean, it's still, that's the category you're going to see probably on Amazon and stuff. But I think people are being like a little bit more specific when they describe their books. So like, because yeah, like it's not really accurate to call my book like a gay romance if one of the characters is bisexual. Yeah, so.
Yeah, thank you. And Shawntelle, you mentioned what indie publishing is doing versus what traditional publishing is doing. Could you give us a little more context for what you mean by indie and traditional publishing for people who are new to the industry?
Sure. So when I mean traditional publishing, I'm referring to books that are released by, I guess now it's the big five, where you've got your publishers out of Penguin Random House, Simon & Schuster, Macmillan. When those various houses release titles, they're considered traditional publishing titles. Now, the beautiful thing about independent publishing is now authors have the ability to actually produce the books themselves. Not only will they write them, but they can secure editing and all the other steps the traditional publishers would do, and launch their titles on their own. So you've got an opportunity for authors to either work with a traditional publisher, or they can work and release their work independently.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It was very, very helpful and very clear. So we maybe touched on this just a little bit with the last question, but of all of these changes that we were discussing about, like, what are you most excited in the genre or in the industry to seeing right now? What trends or what changes in how publishing is working, or what new things in your genre are really exciting you?
I think for me, like, there's not a lot of like queer romance on the shelves, like actual physical copies of books. Like, you're not going to find them at like Chapters in Canada or Barnes and Noble in the States so much. You might in the YA category, but not in on the romance shelves. And I think like we're right on the edge of those books starting to like actually be displayed in brick and mortar stores. I don't know. I feel like it's about to happen. I hope it's about to happen. But that's what I'm getting excited about.
Yeah, I feel like something like Red, White, and Royal Blue, which was available in those stores, is sort of paving the way towards more of that, hopefully.
Yeah, like blockbusters like that really help. Yeah.
Other thoughts?
Oh, I was going to say, for me, I just had to double check the name. I'm actually getting more excited about how romance is potentially moving into the App Store as far as interactive stories and interactive applications. And I would love to see more genres featured. I'd like to see a lot of the authors that I have loved and adored see their books actually introduced into the app space. So that's one of the things I'm pretty excited about, because readers aren't just reading a physical book, they're using e-readers and such, but how are some other ways that we can interact with readers besides audiobooks? And so apps is obviously another space that I would love to see authors venture out into.
Yes, it's great. Awesome.
I don't have anything to add.
Yeah, that's fine. It's all easy. So obviously we discussed that our group, Superheroines, etc., is part of interested in empowering within the geek culture. Do you guys have any fandoms that you're really into, just that you enjoy, or that maybe have even inspired some of your own writing or ideas?
Oh, wow. Where can I start?
Anywhere.
Okay, so this is going to be hard because I'm stretched, because I'm wearing a Wonder Woman shirt right now. So one would think that I'm DC, but I kind of, lots of times I lean Marvel sometimes. So I'm sorry. But yeah, I would definitely say that the highlight of my life was going to Comic-Con, and San Diego Comic-Con, and being able to geek out over the various fandoms and such. And I would say that I hope that I at least get an opportunity that St. Louis Comic-Con comes back, so that I can be really excited, and instead of just fawning over the fandoms from afar that I can really get up close and personal again. So that kind of thing.
For me, it's The Walking Dead, and I love the series. I love the comics. I took an opportunity when I was at a sci-fi con in Kentucky. I was signing books, and I was able to meet Norman Reedus, so that was cool. I was planning on stalking him, and then I'd been at a signing and doing like workshops all day, and I was sitting there. I was kind of leaning up against the wall, but you have your name badge on, you know. And this volunteer came up, was like, "Can I get you anything?" I'm like, "No, I'm fine. I just need, you know." He's like, "No, what can I get you?" And I was like, "No, I'm good." And he's like, "No." And I was like, "Norman Reedus, you can get me Norman Reedus." He goes, "Actually, he just went on a break." And I was like, "Oh." So I went into the room, and he was nice, and I was speechless, and it was a lot of fun. And I do read fan fiction when you know, I'm just relaxing. I don't write it, but I read a lot of the Walking Dead fan fiction.
That's great.
Yeah, I was a big, like, I've been a comic book fan for a long time. I was hardcore DC for a long time, and then kind of became more Marvel. Certainly the movies made me more Marvel. I had a comic book blog and then podcast for many years, so I'm like pretty nerdy, but yeah, I definitely have read a lot of fan fiction in the comic book and superhero television shows and movies fandoms. So I like that stuff. Yeah, I'm not like, I don't really read or write like a ton of fan fiction, but every now and again I'll just want to like dive back into it, and that's all I want to read for a while. and then I just kind of like go back to regular books. But yeah, no, I've always been like a fan of something. It just keeps changing.
To me, fan fiction's fun because you don't know, they aren't following any rules.
Yeah.
You know, so I could be on this one story, all of a sudden they'll take a left. I'm like, no, they didn't just do that, you know, and yeah, I love not having any idea where it's going. There's that freedom in that as a reader. It's fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. So could you guys, you know, obviously at Superhero Etc., we're also interested in the intersection of geek culture and feminism. Could you guys talk a little bit about what you think makes romance feminist and what, how that comes through in your own writing?
I would have to say, oh, go ahead, Ange.
No, go.
No. Oh, I was going to say that is one of the things that I had loved in reading romance is that women are empowered. You can, as an author or even as a reader, I want to read about character change, someone changing their perceptions or how they feel. And the beautiful thing about romance is that oftentimes I will read a novel where there is growth, there is change, there is an opportunity for the heroine to change their community or change themselves. And so I feel like romance does offer that opportunity. And as authors, I love to have a heroine who is not only empowered, but she empowers other women to be stronger and to do better.
Well, it's about women standing up for who they are and for their sexuality, and not hiding it under the bed, you know, and seeing how many can fit underneath. It's actually standing up for who you are and what you need, and celebrating that, making that not only okay, but as something that we can all aspire to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I like to think my books are very. The two protagonists are male in my books. I just, yeah, I think that it's a genre that can invite a lot of misogyny into it, and even when it's written by women. So I just like think, yeah, I try really hard to like make sure that my characters are like are feminist. And the stories are like feminist, and I make sure that there are women in the stories who are not just obstacles or, you know, jealous exes or something like that. So it's like, I think, yeah, to me, the feminist nature of romance is one of the major. Same with fan fiction. I think it's definitely there in every story.
Awesome. So prior to this panel, we had a little write salon, and some people wrote some work. In case there are some writers who are watching us, what advice would you have for people who are just starting out, maybe thinking about writing romance or writing for publication in general?
Write the story that you want to write. Write the story that excites you and just makes you almost scared after you put it on the page. Like, oh, did I really say that? Maybe I should tone it down. Because I think so many times when you want to be published and you want people to read your work, at least for me, I read all the books and I tried all the outlining and all the things. And really what it did is that I was writing for other people. I was writing for, oh, I hope an agent likes this. I hope an editor likes this. I hope somebody wants to publish this. And I wasn't writing for me. And it showed on the page. You know, everything I wrote was safe. And I actually had an agent that I really admired contact me and say, I like this story, but I hope it doesn't sell because you're not actually, this is not you. This is a story that you want, that you think people want. And what we really want is whatever you're not putting on that page. And I ended up pulling that novel from submission, and I just wrote this. I just wrote exactly what scared me. And that became my first published book. It hit the New York Times list. It was what I needed to do, but it was 10 kinds of scary. And it took me several unpublished books to figure that out. You know, it's writing is not for the timid. And I tend to be a little timid sometimes. So, you know, if you feel yourself being that, you know that it's normal and that it's okay to push through it.
I would say the number one thing for me is staying hungry. It's easy. I guess I've had a lot of folks, even Angie, tell me that writing is a marathon. You're going to have some times where you sprint. There's going to be some times when you walk. There's going to be some times when you crawl to the finish line. But either way, you do have to stay hungry and you have to keep crawling forward. You have to keep every single word you type is the next word toward your manuscript. So I would say the number one tip is stay hungry and to keep writing and to keep working on that manuscript, because eventually you will reach the end.
Yeah, I'd agree with both of those. I know for me, it's like I have to write what I want to write. Like I started writing for fun. It was a way to relax. And I try to keep as much of that even now that I have deadlines and, you know, things I need to do and it's more of a job, but I try to write what I want to write, not worry too much. I'm not somebody who like looks at like how to write books or like how to write websites or like, you know, these are what you should do if you want to get published. I didn't pay much attention to that. I just kind of wrote the story I wanted to write. And when I got feedback on it, you know, I took those notes and used it to like revise and resubmit. And I don't know, I tried not to get too hung up on like how to publish a book before I did it. I just wrote the story I wanted to write and then, you know, took the criticism that I got and reworked it. So that's what I guess that would be my advice is write what you want to write. Don't write, you know, for the market or like whatever you think is going to get you published.
Yeah, as soon as you write for the market, you're already almost behind the market, if that makes any sense. Even when I wrote my first book, I was like, I'm gonna write a Demon Slayer. Nobody's writing Demon Slayers. I read all the paranormals. There's no Demon Slayers. And you know, Dorchester bought it and they put it out the next year, and darned if there weren't like 6 other Demon Slayer books that came out because everybody had the same idea. Everybody's like, no Demon Slayer, you know. So just when you think you're so brilliant, you know, maybe you're not. And that's okay, as long as you have your own take on something. People want to read what you have to say because you are a unique voice. And you got to remember that.
Yeah, my most popular book is my second one, which I wrote totally just for me. I wasn't even sure if I was going to show it to anybody. I was just like, this is too weird. I was like, this is specifically for me. This is like just for fun. And yeah, I think, it doesn't fit the format of a traditional romance novel, really. So I just didn't think anyone would really like it. But it's like, yeah, you just got to do what you want to do in your heart. And you'll find your readers.
That was great advice. Would you guys want to each talk about how you came to be published, the actual path that you took to getting your first book published?
Sure, I guess I can go first. I started out in late 2008, and the first manuscript that I wrote that, of course, I immediately sent out for querying, which shall forever stay doomed and never even made it past the full manuscript stage. But the beautiful thing about it is after that first book, obviously, that was the practice book. And then after that, the second manuscript, which was the correct one where, like Angie said, I wrote what I enjoyed. I found my voice. I had fun. I wrote a paranormal romance. And that's the one that got me my literary agent. From there, though, that particular book did not sell to New York. But the book after that actually was coveted. And coveted actually sold to Delray Ballantyne. And so that was my first published book, and that was 2018. Oh, no, 2012.
I started writing in 2000, and I was an advertising copywriter, and they let you take courses to expand your creativity. You could take pottery, you could take whatever. And so I took novel writing because, how hard can it be, right? I mean, I'm a writer professionally, so a novel should be no problem. I read so much. And I'm glad I didn't know, because it took me 7 years and 4 unpublished books. And it was tough, no lying. I mean, it's when your friends are out at the winery and you are writing chapter 14 of a book that you don't know if it's going to be published, but you know that you have to keep going, or you'll never finish it. And if you go too long between writing sessions, at least for me, I'd forget the whole thread of the book. So it was tough. And, when I finally had enough of it, just wrote what I wanted, and I sold that book. I had just given birth. My son was teeny tiny, newborn. And my mother said, Angie, that's terrible timing. Why would you sell a book when you have a newborn? I said, I didn't think it was going to sell. How am I supposed to know? And then they immediately wanted, another one 6 months later, and the books had done well, and it launched after that. But yeah, for me, it was not the first or the second or the third book at all. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think we hear stories of people that sell right away, and we think we have to be like that.
Exactly.
In retrospect, I think in a way I'm thankful. And I know that sounds really sucky to hear, because, oh yeah, sure, you're thankful 20 books later. But when the books took off, and, when I was on the Times list and things were really, really going, at least I knew I could write another book in 6 months, because I figured out my process. I figured out where my pitfalls were. I understood myself as a writer. I understood book structure a little better than I had the first couple of times out of the chute. And I was able to use all of that in order to, consistently release for the next 12 years. Yeah, it's 12 years, So, yeah. You can do it. You can.
I wrote my first book on my iPad while sitting on my son's beds while waiting for them to go to sleep. It was shortly after my second son was born. And I kind of was writing it and then just kind of like forgot about it for a while. And then I posted it I changed stuff. I didn't know what to do with it because I hadn't even looked into how to get published, and it didn't really occur to me that it was something that could be published. So I changed like names and things and changed it to fan fiction and posted it on a fan fiction site. And then it was pretty popular on there. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm taking off the fan. I gave everybody lots of warning, and I'm like, this is going off. I'm going to submit this. I'm going to revise it and make it better. And I'm going to turn it into a real book. So I did. And I sent it to 2 publishers, and that had like open submissions. I checked their website for all the stuff and made sure I did everything correctly. And I waited a lot of months, so you have to be patient. But in that time, I worked on the second book. And then I heard from both of them at once, and they both were revise and resubmit. So then I had to make a choice about who to revise and resubmit to. And I chose the wrong one because I ended up having to like leave that publisher in a hurry with a lot of other authors. And I went to Karina, and thankfully they still wanted it. And so my story is like weird, but basically the short version is I wrote something in my spare time and then submitted it and got a revise and resubmit, which is not a rejection, and nobody should take it that way. Mm-hmm. And I revised and resubmitted, and and it got published, and then they wanted the next book. So yeah, I think just patience, and if you're going to go the traditional route, patience, and be able to take the notes.
Awesome. For people not going to the traditional route, for people who are interested maybe in indie publishing, do you guys have any advice or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, go for it. I do a lot of indie now, and I think it's wonderful. It's actually the same process that I had with my New York books. The one thing I will say is don't get too ambitious, because with New York, everything moves slower. So you think, oh, well, I could do it faster. And then you do it faster with indie, and it becomes this rush. And you're like, oh, that was too fast. So things always, writing a book, I always tell my husband is like, doing a home renovation. It always costs twice as much and takes twice as long as you think. So, build time into your schedules. But there are just so many really good, there's a certain publisher who I love a lot of the books she's edited, some of my favorite series she's edited. So I contacted her. I was like, hey, can you work on my my Southern Ghost Hunters? And she said, well, send me a sample, and I did. And she ended up working with me. So you can end up working with, your dream editor, the editor that you've always wanted to work with. You can choose your covers. That was always, there were some covers I got in traditional that, you always think better, but, I was like, oh, I wanted a certain other kind of cover. So it's indie, you can be in control of that, for better or for worse. I've also made cover mistakes thinking I knew exactly what I was doing. And then I was like, oh, that maybe I was wrong. But that's the great thing about indie too, is you can be wrong. It's not a big deal. You just get a different cover on there, or you adjust, and so it's nice to be in control. But yeah, just plan it out and take it easy, and know that you can do it. And you can sell a lot of books too. From my experience, my readers don't care if I sell my book to a publisher or if I have it edited and do it myself. They just want the story.
I would say my number one tip is be prepared to do research. Be prepared to learn. Be open to learning. Be humble. There's going to be a chance for you to learn, and there's going to be opportunities for you to be quiet and listen to other people who have already gone through the process. And the folks who have already gone through the process may not have the time to help you. So you have to be open to learning on your own sometimes. And I would say also be open to writing organizations. Even though you may want to go out on your own with independent publishing, I still believe you should be open to learning through a professional writing organization, whether it be SIFWA, HWA, RWA, Romance Writers of America. I say that even if you're doing indie, being a writer still means learning the craft. So you should still be open to learning while you're doing independent publishing.
And it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I mean, if you sit around a bar at a writers' conference, everybody will tell you, what they did wrong, and guess what? All these people have great careers, usually. I mean, it's not that they did something wrong and everything crashed and burned and everybody said, oh, we'll never read you again. And that was it. No, they picked a bad cover. They branched out in a genre that might not have been their cup of tea. Whatever mistake that you think is terrible, it doesn't. Don't worry about it. Just own it and keep writing.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, we are so excited to have another addition to our panel, an addition who, if you were part of our panel many years ago, you will recognize, and that is author Jeannie Lin. Jeannie, would you mind just jumping in and tell us who you are and what you write?
Oh, sure. And I'm sorry, I am on mommy time. I was chasing my kids around. I totally had it on the calendar for a different time. I'm Jeannie Lin. I write historical romance and steampunk. And I was originally published with Harlequin and Berkeley. And I would say now it's been long enough that I would consider myself indie at this point. I guess technically hybrid, but really indie at this point. Yeah, so it's Imperial China is my thing. Tang Dynasty and Qing Dynasty. Lots of adventure, lots of drama, lots of empires in danger, that sort of thing.
Amazing. We're so glad to have you and have you to talk about all of these things. You're like 10 questions behind, so now you're going to have to answer like 10 in a row. I'm just kidding.
Dodged a bullet.
Yeah. But actually, it would be great. Could you tell us, for people who haven't read your books before, maybe what book or series you'd recommend that they start with?
I would say, well, it depends on what kind of heat level, I guess, you're looking for. So if you're looking for more heat, the Lotus Palace series is sexier. It's about the courtesan culture in 9th century Imperial China. And it's very similar to geisha culture, where women were trained and to be conversationalists, to be musicians, to be entertainers, and really dealt with really powerful men. But it created kind of a cool, interesting, dangerous dynamic between men and women. And so I think it's a really sexy read. If you're looking for adventure and sort of the swashbuckling action, then the Gunpowder Alchemy series, that's my steampunk series. It's romantic, but it's a little, I'd say it's YA friendly. It wasn't written necessarily as YA, but it is definitely YA friendly for a read. But it's that happens later on in 18th century China, and that's the reimagining of the Opium Wars, reimagining it if on the British side they had steam technology and the Chinese had gunpowder technology, and that's 3 books in, working on a 4th.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Yeah, we talked a little bit about some of the changes going on in the industry, and everybody was saying how great it is to have moved past the point where there was really mainly Regency historicals, but now people are interested in writing about other periods. Could you talk a little bit about writing Imperial China in historicals and how you came to do that and what the market is like for non-traditional historicals right now?
Sure. It's I guess there always isn't a market and there always is a market, if you want to think of it that way. When I first started reading historicals, there was actually a lot of range. There was, the adventure stories. You were going off to exotic locations and things like that. And then it kind of shrunk and everybody wanted to do Regency. And then I think now it's branching out quite a bit again, although not that much. I think it's still Regency land in the historical market. But I think indie publishing has allowed people to really kind of branch out a little bit. And in traditional, I think that a lot of the historical is moving kind of upmarket. It's moving towards women's fiction. So you'll still get romance, but it's historical mystery or historical women's fiction is where you see the other settings a lot more. I started writing it. I actually kind of fell into it. I was already a romance reader, and I happened to pick up a book by Jade Lee, who also writes, she writes everywhere. She writes Regency and she writes contemporary, she writes Bear Shifters. But she also writes a series in Imperial China, and I had just never realized it was possible. I was like, this is amazing. You can do that, you know? And so when I sat down to I don't know, when I sat down to first write a book, I never thought it was going to be published. I thought, oh, I'm going to do it for fun, and it's for, you know, something to pass the time and something to show to my friends, maybe, you know, kind of thing. And then the more I did it and the more I got to know the romance industry and the more I got to network, I was like, I've spent too much time like for this to be just a hobby. I'm going to make this real. So I sort of was already down that path before I knew too much about the industry. And I think it was probably a blessing, like, never tell me the odds, you know. And so I started doing what I do because I didn't know the odds. And that's just kind of how I landed. So I think, I mean, Angie and Shawntelle were talking about, you know, the advice. I think the advice is you really do have to find something you love, because you're going to get kicked in the head so many times and the industry is going to change. So, you know, even though it's been a struggle sometimes writing what I do, I think at least I love what I do. So at least I love what I write, and feel good about it. So, you know, on the bad days, you at least have that to keep you going.
That's great. What would you guys say is your favorite part of being a writer?
The glamorous.
Okay, I gotta admit this. It's browsing cover art, browsing stock photos for cover art, and sometimes I consult with Jeannie to find the perfect man chest or the perfect angle to get the right shot. I have to say that is one of the great diversions from actually putting words into my Word document, is browsing various cover and doing research.
See, Shawntelle, I thought you were going to say writing without a bra. Like, that would be mine. And now I'm going to say it like, because I was like, oh, Shawntell's going to say it, ha, ha, ha. But I know you. That's top up there too. Like, you know, like with the rest of us. Yeah, and plus it's really neat doing what we can do, because, you know, I wrote commercially for a while. I you know, did campaigns for you know, Anheuser-Busch, and, you know, selling beer and you know, Southern Comfort and a lot of alcohol, actually. But you know, you were working off somebody else's brand and idea and vision, and while there's creativity in that, for me it's really neat to work off my own idea and vision, and decide like what I want to write and how I want to spend my days. It's kind of like Jeannie was saying, you know, pick something you love, because even when you get kicked in the head and you're having a bad day, or, you know, you chose the wrong cover or whatever, or you released, you know, on a bad day, you still got to write this book that you're thrilled about, that represents who you are. And that's a gift. I mean, how else can you say it? I mean, it's a neat industry.
I think for me, there's like nothing better than when somebody really connects with a character that I created, or, you know, and just tells me how much they love a character that like I made up. It's just a really satisfying thing. And it's exciting because I've felt that way about so many other characters that other people have created. Like, I just love fictional characters. So to be able to create, you know, one or two that resonate with readers, that's really exciting. I think that's kind of what makes it all worth it when I'm like really stressed about writing, or it's just not working. I can just kind of, you know, go back to some of those, you know, emails and stuff I've gotten and been like, yeah, okay, I can do this.
I was going to say the fame and the glamour, because it really is glamorous. We always say, you know, it's not as glamorous as people think, but it actually is a little bit glamorous if glamorous is, right? If glamorous is that you got to write something that people paid attention to. Like even okay, I'm a little Pollyanna sometimes. Even when I get a bad review, I was like, but this person read my book. They read it, they hated it, but they read it, you know. Or what's great is, I'm going to see some nods here. What's great is like when you get the same person who like binge reads all your books, and then like negative reviews, all of them. And you're like, wow, I must have got in your head because you read every single one and you hated them all. And you had to tell the world you hated them. But I think it is kind of a little bit of a hit for me to know that, you know, something you're doing is enduring. You know, you wrote a book 10 years ago and people are still commenting on it. And you're like, that's kind of cool. That doesn't suck, you know? And you know, hate or love or hate, they're reading it, and that is kind of glamorous to me. I think I like that.
That's great. So do you guys read reviews of your work, and do you have any that have good or bad stuck with you?
Well, obviously, yes. I mean, I used to be I used to be a high school teacher, and so I always say, like, nothing, like, the worst review out there is not going to be as bad as I've been, like, cussed out by teenagers who I cared about, you know. So I'm like, oh, it's not bad, you know. So I can take it, but I read all of them. I'm kind of a junkie about that.
I sort of skim read. Like, I try not to like read them too closely, and I don't really. Bad ones don't bother me. I actually, like, you know, I'll take notes from some of them. There's things in there that I'm like, you know, that's maybe a good point. I'll think about that for my next book. But some of them are just like so mean. And I'm like, that's just like a mean thing to put on the internet. You know, I'm going to read that. But
like, I didn't kick your dog. I mean,
like, okay. But I don't know. No, it doesn't really. The bad ones don't bother me very much, and the good ones are great. They help.
Yeah, I read, especially like in the beginning, like when a book first comes out. I'm like,
yeah,
people get that twist. Did they understand this thing? You know, and
That's me too.
And that's fun. Yeah. But then I'm surprised by a lot of it too, because, you know, I have some, like, you know, spooky cemetery ghosty things in my book, and like, I'm not scared of it, I guess, because I tried to structure the whole thing. Then people are like, that was really scary. I'm like, well, that's not that scary. People are like, I was asleep, and I was like, oh, you know. So it's hard to really, yeah, it's hard to distance yourself from your work enough to understand how people are going to relate. But it's nice because, yeah, the good reviews are fun because they help you get excited about writing the next book, and also they help you understand, like, what characters are really resonating with people, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna bring that person back. That you know, everybody was talking about this particular couple. Well, let's give them a cameo in the next book, or let's give them a short story. You know, so it really does help us decide where to go next as far as who you want to see.
Awesome. Angie, earlier in our discussion, you mentioned that you're getting books back from a publisher who maybe didn't do exactly what you wanted with them, so you're going to have a second chance. How do you guys, what's your experience in terms of balancing what you want to do with books and your own vision with balancing things like editorial feedback or review feedback, or what your publisher maybe wants you to do? How do you find the right balance and still stay true to your own vision?
Well, I think it's smart to listen, like, to your editor, because I'll write my first draft and I think it's like, oh, this is great. And then my editor will send me the edit letter, and it's usually, you know, several pages long, single spaced. And she purposely does not want to talk to me on the phone that day. And I'll read it, and I always get mad. I just do. She didn't understand. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Yes, I think she's brilliant, but this is book 8, and she still doesn't know what she's talking about. So then I call my critique partner, a friend of mine who writes young adult, and I tell her all the ways that my editor is wrong. And she listens to me, and yeah, you know, and she's like, oh, no, maybe you should think about it. I'm like, no, she's wrong. And then the next day I always have a call with my editor, and I'll say, okay, you're wrong. And she goes, okay, well, listen to it this way. And she'll lay it all out. And then by the time we have this conversation, which usually takes a couple hours, I have a whole different vision for my book, and it's things I never would have thought about, which means she's an amazing editor, because I can't do that on my own. If I would have thought about it, I would have done it. And a lot of times it's just little tweaks here, that all of a sudden you make them, and it's it makes so much difference. It's just gorgeous. And it is how you envisioned it, just in a little bit of a different way, but it makes so much more sense, and it is so much more true to the character or whatnot. So a great editor can really just do wonders, and it's okay to get mad too. And I tell her that I get mad every time, and she's like, "That's why I don't talk to you the day I give it to you." She's like, "You need to internalize it," you know. So yeah, you know, and that's what I learned in New York, actually, because in New York I didn't have as much of a choice. You know, I had to really listen to my editor, and I saw how well it did for the books. And now, as you know, if I write an indie book, technically I don't have to do any of that, but I'd be crazy not to, because it's a hard process, and nobody likes, you know, hearing that your baby might be a little ugly. But boy, it can make it makes a huge difference for you and for the readers. You know, I my second book in the Ghost Hunter series, I had the first book where she traps this ghost, and the second book I just had him there, and she's like, "Don't you think they should be trying to free him?" I was like, "Yeah, whole 1,000 word subplot." And that ended up being the reader's favorite part of the book, because it's really silly and it's fun, and it's mixed with the danger, and that wouldn't have been except for my editor. And I fully admit that, and I didn't understand it at the time. So yeah, I can sit there and say I know what I want to do with the series I'm getting back from Macmillan, from St. Martin's, but I'm also going to be working with an editor on that. It's just I've changed as a writer in those 8 years, and there's always been things I wanted to do to that. But that doesn't mean what happened the first time was wrong, because it was not. It was a solid book. I mean, two out of the three of those books were reader finalists, which is an award for the RWA group. So. Oh, come on. I talk too much. Everybody else can talk now. Like I was rambling, you know. Like,
I'll just say my editor is amazing. Mackenzie Walton's amazing, and she has made all of my books better because I have completely listened to her. I think she'd say I'm pretty easygoing. I get my notes back, and I'm like, okay, I will make all of these changes, and all of the books have been better for it. But I think it's just good to... I know that not everyone's lucky enough to have that relationship with their editor, but if you find that editor, it does make a big difference, because I don't use beta readers or anything. I'm just really like, I can do this myself. And then like when I started working with a great editor, I was like, oh no, you need more people. Yeah. It really helps.
I think part of the art is knowing what battles, like what part of your vision you don't, you know, what part of your core vision you need to hang on to, and what you want to fight for, and what can change. And I've always said that, like, I could actually let go of a lot of my book, even though you would say, like, you know, you're letting go of your vision. It's like, well, not really, right? There's a core story I'm trying to get out. There's a core heart of the characters I'm trying to get out. And, you know, this scene or that scene is sometimes window dressing. I may have loved it. My editor may have said, yeah, great scene, but goes nowhere, you know, or something like that. But it's sort of like, I know what I really want to hold on to, and I know what I can let go. And I think that was something I've also learned working in traditional publishing. Is like, you know, they have a good editor tends to tell you what's wrong and doesn't tell you how to fix it. And the couple times my editors would tell me how to fix something, I'm like, no, that's wrong. Like, they're not writers. They don't know how to fix these things. They might try, but they kind of understand that. A good editor understands that they're not a writer. But they can see where things can be better, you know, kind of thing, and give you suggestions. And so I think it's, one, knowing what to keep and what to fight for. And then two, realizing that, you know, like Angie said, you can be mad, you can be stubborn, and you can hang on to something. And then you have to say, like, why am I hanging on? Like, why am I hanging on to that? Is there a reason that I'm so stubborn about this? You know, is it because I knew it sucked and I just hoped that no one would notice, you know, which I've done. And they always notice. You never get away with that one. And then just finding an editor where you have that trust, you know, and I think it helps.
That's true.
To recognize real quick where it's like, okay, this editor, they're not poking holes in my story because I'm a bad writer, you know, and if I don't trust them, then I'm not going to let them poke holes in my story, you know. So you kind of have to find that balance of, and especially in indie, you know, if you're working with an editor you don't trust, then, you know, you can find another one, but you got to know when and how to find someone you can trust.
So 2020 has obviously been an unusual year. What have you guys been doing to, the writing takes a lot of creativity. What have you been doing to be able to continue to funnel that creativity, or to take care of yourselves, or to keep going during a year that's very different than would be normal?
I think one of the keys for me has been, there's a small group of authors, of which Shawntelle is Shawntelle is one of them, where we do try to meet up on Zoom, and I think that's been really helpful. We meet up for lunch, and have a cocktail sometimes, and just gripe about things. But I think the human contact has always been good for me as a writer, and being able to somehow maintain that has been helpful to just keep things going.
I've been reading a lot of what I call comfort books. When all of this started going down, one of the first things I did is I started ordering series to binge that I love, that I had just like given away half the books over the years, or lost them, or didn't keep them because I'm trying not to have as many print books. But I love print books at night. It's my bit, So I would order entire series of books that I just know I love. Because I'm not going out on the weekends, and so I just have a time to binge read, and that's been huge. And then I've taken a lot more walks. I hear writers are supposed to be walking, and I would just walk around my house. And my husband, when he worked at home, would be like, the clomp 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 of your shoes, or you walk around, and I'm like, oh, I'm thinking, but I've been going outside because I gotta get out of the house. And so that's been nice, just to walk and think. And I've learned that you can actually come up with really neat plot ideas that way if you're just walking. But I also learned that if you don't write them down, you can forget them if you're me, because I'm not smart enough to remember. So I will now walk with my notebook, and the neighbors think that's pretty funny.
For me, like Angie, I love walking. And one of the things I do on the side for fun is I do Pokemon Go. And with Pokemon Go, you're catching Pokemon. And sometimes, for the folks who know, every couple of weeks, the nests of different Pokemon change in parks. So that means that it's an opportunity for me to maybe explore or see different places, roll down the window, get some fresh pollen, and to explore the different parks in the area where I'm at, and maybe see a new place that I haven't seen before, or raid a gym in a place that I've never been before. But it's me leaving my desk, protecting my eyes from the screen, and basically having some fun and relaxing.
Yeah, I thought kind of when this
I think we might have lost Rachel for a second.
Okay.
We'll hope she comes back. We're coming towards the end of our panel, so if there are any final audience questions, you guys can feel free to post them on YouTube or in Discord, and we'll try and get to those. Is there anything you guys want to talk about that we haven't covered yet? Any fun stories you want to share? Other advice? Other things you were hoping to discuss tonight?
I would have to say that I cannot wait for movies to come back. I love to go out to the movies, and I'm not going to lie, I'm one of those people that I don't mind going alone, because I want to enjoy a movie. And I have been to too many movies in the theater with people. You're right next to the oh no person, the person who screams every time something bad happens, the person who yells out, don't go in there, he's bad for you, or he's not going to do you right. I like to focus on what's happening. So I'm sad that I won't be able to see Mulan anytime soon. The new Mulan is supposed to be coming. I wanted to really see Tenet. I really, really I can't wait for the next Wonder Woman. So I'm hoping that they're not going to push that one due to what's going on. So I cannot wait to go back to the movies. When it's safe. Not now.
I did wear my Wonder Woman shirt, by the way.
Did it too?
Yeah, Great.
Totally not planned. It wasn't planned.
Great. Rachel, sorry, we lost you for a second. Did you want to finish?
My internet went out. I don't know. I reset it. It's fine.
That happens. Yeah.
Oh, was I talking about the thing about what I was doing during this pandemic? Okay, yeah. Basically, yeah. When it started, I thought I'd have a lot of free time to write, but I wasn't really thinking about, first of all, the mental toll of all of this, and the fact that my kids and my husband would be around all the time, and my writing desk is in the middle of our living room. I don't have a writing office, so really I depended really heavily not only on my kids, not being around all the time, but like my husband going out at night with friends so I could have time to write, but everyone's just around all the time. And also, like, I can't go out and observe people or the world, which is like something that really helps you write. And I had a research trip planned for Ottawa where my next book is set, and I can't do that now. And it's just like, it's kind of made things harder. But on the plus side, for me personally, hockey is suddenly back in August, so at least I have that to watch to kind of inspire my hockey writing. So I was like, that's a weird thing that's happening. So yeah, it's a little different for summer anyway.
Awesome. You guys, I think that we have come kind of to the end of our panel time. You guys have been so fabulous. It's been such a fun, interesting, and informative discussion. Before we go, I'm sure that everybody who's watching is going to want to check out all of your books and hopefully follow you on social media, as you all should. Would you guys want to tell people where they can learn more about you and where they can find you on social media?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but I tend to kind of hover. I don't know. I go for days without it, and then I hover around. So I'm in and out. But I'm at Jeannie Lin, and I think you can find me on Jeannie Lin on Twitter or on Facebook as well. Jeannie Lin author on Facebook as well, and JeannieLin.com. No space or no dashes.
I was going to say I'm the same as Jeannie. You can find me on Twitter as just @Shawntelle. You can find me on Facebook as Shawntelle Madison author. I also do Instagram once in a while. That's Shawntelle Madison. And then you can find more about me at ShawntellMadison.com.
I'm on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at AKA Rachel Reid. And I'm on Instagram as Rachel Reid Writes. I'm not on Facebook, and I don't use either like a ton, but that's where you can find me.
Yeah, I go on in stages on social media where I'm on a lot and then I'm not. But when I'm on, I'm usually on Facebook at Angie Fox author, and then Twitter at Angie Fox author. Although I'm not on Twitter as much. I actually observe more on Twitter than I tweet. And I don't know why that is. It's kind of weird.
It's a scary place.
But if like something's breaking, that's where you go is Twitter. Because that to me, it's just people on the ground. And then I have a lot of information up at my website at angiefox.com.
Awesome. Well, you all, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We really appreciate it. And it's been really, really fun chatting with all of you. Hopefully we can revisit this panel again someday in the future. Everyone who's watching, I hope you will check out all of these authors, check out their books that they've talked about, and thank you all for being a part of tonight. There's a couple more nights of the SheCon left to go. So we will hope to see you guys back in the next couple of nights if you are watching for more exciting panels and happy hours and events. Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.